My son gave me a very special gift for my 72nd birthday in front of all our friends and family. It wasn't jewelry. It was a court petition to have me declared mentally incompetent. He thought his grieving mother would be an easy target. He didn't know I was about to use a decades-old secret to fund the fireworks at his own spectacular downfall. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know, I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Geneva Lockwood, and at 72, my world had shrunk to the quiet, echo-filled rooms of the house my late husband Arthur and I had built together. Grief is a patient thief. It doesn't take everything at once. First, it takes the sound of your loved one's laughter from the hallways, then the scent of their cologne from their favorite armchair. Finally, it starts to steal pieces of you, leaving you lost in a sea of memory. My only son, Desmond, was supposed to be my anchor in that sea. Instead, he became the storm. It was Marlon, my late husband's godson, whose quiet, consistent kindness kept me from drifting away entirely. He'd bring me groceries I hadn't asked for but always needed, and would fix the little things around the house that Desmond pointed out as signs of my decay. He'd always say it with a simple, "Don't you worry about that, Geneva." Arthur would have my hide if I let this place fall apart. Desmond's campaign of psychological warfare began subtly, waged under the guise of a son's concern. It started a few months after his own messy divorce from Althea, a woman I still loved like the daughter I never had. The bitterness of their separation seemed to have curdled something in him. He'd visit, his face a mask of worried solicitude, and move things. Just small things at first. My reading glasses, which I always left on the nightstand, would turn up in the kitchen cupboard. The remote control for the television would be found in the linen closet. "Mom," he'd say, his voice dripping with forced patience as I searched frantically, "you're getting so forgetful. You need to be more careful." I knew I hadn't moved them. I have a mind that cataloged 50 years of historical dates for my work as a community college archivist. I don't misplace my reading glasses. But the certainty in his voice, his unwavering insistence, planted the first tiny poisonous seed of doubt. One afternoon I spent a frantic half-hour searching for my car keys, only for him to find them hanging on the hook by the door where they always were. "They were right here the whole time, Mom," he said, shaking his head slowly. "See what I mean? It's like you don't even see what's in front of you." For a terrifying moment, standing in my own hallway, I felt a flicker of genuine panic. Had I looked there? I must have. But what if I hadn't? Was my mind, my most trusted asset, beginning to betray me? The campaign escalated. He started canceling appointments I had made with my friends from my old bridge club. "I called Margaret for you, Mom," he'd say breezily. "I knew you weren't feeling up to it today." I would be holding the phone, my heart ready for a pleasant chat with my oldest friend, only to be told by a confused Margaret, "But Geneva, your son called me this morning and said you had to cancel." Desmond would just shake his head with a pitying look. "See? You don't even remember me telling you. We talked about it yesterday." We hadn't. I knew we hadn't. But the quiet gaslighting, the relentless chipping away at my reality, was beginning to take its toll. I started to second-guess myself, to write everything down on little scraps of paper that I'd then misplace, further proving his point. He was isolating me, cutting the threads of my social life one by one, all while performing the role of the devoted, worried son. His new girlfriend, a woman half his age with a hard, appraising glint in her eyes, would sometimes accompany him. I learned her name was Brandy. She would watch me with a mixture of pity and contempt, a silent vulture. She'd listen as Desmond recounted my latest lapse, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows rising in feigned sympathy as she'd pat his arm. "You're such a good son, Des," she'd murmur loud enough for me to hear. I could see them exchanging looks over my head, confirming my decline, my descent into the fog of old age. The house, my beautiful, memory-filled house, became the focus of his concern. He'd point out a loose floorboard I hadn't gotten around to fixing, a dripping faucet I was perfectly capable of handling myself. "This place is getting to be too much for you, Mom," he'd say, his tone heavy with fake worry. "A woman in your condition shouldn't be living alone in such a large property. It's not safe." My condition. He spoke of my grief as if it were a terminal illness, a precursor to complete senility. Every attempt I made to assert my competence was met with that same gentle, infuriating condescension. Now, Mom, don't get agitated. We both know you haven't been yourself since Dad passed. He was using my love for my late husband as a weapon against me, twisting my sorrow into a symptom of a failing mind. He was building a case, brick by insidious brick, a case for my incompetence. And I, caught in the undertow of my own grief and his relentless psychological siege, was beginning to drown. My world was shrinking, my confidence eroding, my own thoughts becoming unreliable narrators in the story of my life. He wasn't just my son anymore. He was becoming my keeper, my judge, the sole arbiter of my reality. And the most terrifying part was that, in my loneliest, most confused moments, a small part of me was starting to believe him. For my 72nd birthday, Desmond insisted on throwing a party. Not a quiet family dinner, which would have been my preference, but a grand, catered affair in my own home. "We need to celebrate you, Mom," he'd said, his voice brimming with a sincerity that a year ago would have warmed my heart. Now it sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't a celebration, it was a performance. And I had a sickening feeling that I was not the guest of honor but the main exhibit. He invited all his own friends, successful, sharp-suited men and their elegant wives, people I barely knew. My own few remaining friends, my bridge club ladies, looked small and out of place amidst the loud, self-assured chatter. The party was a showcase, a stage for Desmond to play the role of the dutiful son, a man nobly caring for his aging, difficult mother. As I moved through the room, a woman whose husband I recognized from Desmond's golf pictures cornered me. "Geneva, you are so lucky to have Desmond," she gushed, her eyes wet with artificial sentiment. "He worries about you so. It must be such a comfort to know he's ready to take care of everything for you." It felt less like a compliment and more like a verdict. I saw Desmond talking to his friends, his expression a careful mixture of love and weary resignation, his hand gestures pointing subtly in my direction as if to say, "See what I have to manage?" I moved through the rooms of my own home like a ghost, a polite smile fixed on my face, my heart a cold, tight knot. I felt their eyes on me, the pitying glances, the whispered conversations that would stop abruptly when I approached. Brandy swanned through the party as if she were already its hostess. At one point she adjusted a photo of Arthur and me on the mantelpiece before turning to a guest and sighing dramatically, "Such a shame he's not here to see how much she needs us now." I was a prop in my son's carefully orchestrated drama. The climax came with the toast. The caterers brought out the cake I hadn't chosen, a towering confection of white frosting and sugar flowers. The champagne was poured. Desmond, my son, clinked his glass for attention, a confident, practiced smile on his face. "To my mother," he began, his voice resonating through the suddenly quiet room. "A woman of incredible strength who has given me so much." He looked directly at me, his eyes holding not love but a chilling, triumphant gleam. "And because I love her so much, because I have a duty to protect her as she enters this new, more vulnerable stage of her life, it is now my duty as her loving son, to protect her and her property from her own forgetfulness. In her declining health and memory, I have been forced to take steps to ensure her well-being." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle on the shocked guests, before gesturing to a man near the fireplace. "Desmond's lawyer. Of course. Here to serve papers instead of a slice of birthday cake." As if on cue, the lawyer stepped forward and served me with a thick, official-looking envelope right there in the middle of my living room, surrounded by dozens of frozen faces. My hands trembled as I took it. "This is a petition for conservatorship," Desmond announced, his voice booming with a false, saintly tone. "Filed for your own good, Mom. To keep you safe." A collective gasp went through the room. Conservatorship. He was publicly declaring me incompetent, trying to legally erase me, to seize control of my life, my finances, my home. At my own birthday party. The humiliation was absolute, a tidal wave that threatened to pull me under. The guests stood paralyzed, their champagne flutes halfway to their lips, their faces a mixture of horror, pity, and morbid curiosity. My bridge club friends looked utterly devastated on my behalf. Brandy stood beside him, a look of smug victory on her face. This, I realized, was their endgame. The moved objects, the cancelled appointments, the constant suggestions of my forgetfulness. It had all been a calculated campaign leading to this single brutal moment of public execution. They weren't just trying to control me, They were trying to own me. I looked down at the papers in my hand, the legal jargon swimming before my tear-filled eyes. I felt 100 pairs of eyes on me, waiting for me to break, to weep, to protest my own sanity. I felt the walls of my beautiful home closing in, the home Desmond was trying to steal from me under the guise of protecting me. But then, through the fog of shame and disbelief, a different feeling began to surface. It was a cold, quiet anger, an anger so profound it burned away the tears. He had done this in public. He had tried to humiliate me in front of everyone I knew. He had mistaken my grief for weakness, my age for senility. He had, like so many arrogant men throughout history, made a critical, fatal miscalculation. He had underestimated his opponent. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I slowly, deliberately folded the legal document in half and placed it on the table. I met my son's triumphant gaze with a look of my own, one he had never seen before, one that was as cold and hard as a winter stone. "Thank you, Desmond," I said, my voice quiet but carrying through the stunned silence. "For your concern. Now if you'll all excuse me." And I turned and walked out of the room, my back straight, leaving them all standing there with my untouched birthday cake and the wreckage of a relationship I now knew was irreparably broken. The battle had been declared, and I had no intention of losing. That night my house felt less like a home and more like a besieged fortress. The echoes of my ruined birthday party, the shocked whispers, the hastily offered condolences, the final awkward goodbyes, lingered in the air like a bitter perfume. Desmond had left soon after my quiet retreat, his girlfriend in tow, a look of furious indignation on his face, as if I had been the one to commit some unforgivable social blunder. He had publicly tried to have me declared incompetent, and he was angry that I hadn't played the part of the grateful senile mother with more conviction. Alone in the suffocating silence, the true horror of his actions began to sink in. A conservatorship. It was a legal death, an erasure of my independence, my very personhood. He wanted to control my finances, my property, my life, all under the kind-hearted disguise of protecting me. The gaslighting campaign of the past year, the moved keys, the cancelled appointments, the constant suggestions of my forgetfulness, all clicked into place. It had been a systematic, premeditated effort to build a case against my sanity. And the most terrifying part? For a moment in that crowded room I had almost believed him. The public nature of his declaration, the pity in the eyes of his friends, the sheer audacious confidence of his betrayal, had made me question my own mind. Was I truly forgetful? The seeds of doubt he had so carefully planted were bearing their poisonous fruit. I paced the floor of my bedroom, my heart a frantic, trapped bird against my ribs. I walked through the downstairs rooms, touching the furniture, looking at the photographs. For a dizzying moment, the house felt unfamiliar, as if his narrative had warped the very air within it. Did I choose that wallpaper in the dining room? Was that scratch on the floor from me dragging a chair, or was it a sign of my neglect he'd pointed out? I had to find an anchor, a piece of irrefutable truth, something solid in the swirling chaos of his lies. I needed to prove to myself before I could prove it to anyone else, that I was still Geneva Lockwood, a woman of sound mind and clear memory. My eyes fell upon the old, heavy lockbox tucked away in the back of my closet, the one I hadn't opened since Arthur's passing. It was our box of truths, the place where we kept the history of our shared life. With trembling hands I retrieved it and placed it on my bed. The old key turned stiffly in the lock. Inside, the familiar scent of old paper and cedar filled the air. And then, at the very bottom I found it. The thick, folded sheaf of legal papers from 1997. The postnuptial agreement and the quitclaim deed. My breath caught in my throat. I had forgotten about this not because my mind was failing, but because it was a relic of a past crisis, a painful memory I had packed away. I unfolded the deed, my eyes scanning the dense, legal text. And there was. Clear, unambiguous, legally binding. The property at 12 Chestnut Street, transferred solely and entirely to Geneva Lockwood, a married woman as her sole and separate property. My name alone. The reason for it came rushing back. Desmond's first failed business venture as a young man, a disastrous attempt at a high-tech startup funded by predatory lenders. The threat of foreclosure had loomed over us, over Arthur's legacy. My own inheritance from my parents, money I had carefully guarded, was used to save our home. I remembered Arthur's face, etched with worry and love. "This is your money, Geneva," he'd insisted. "This house is yours. We will protect it from any future storms." It was a legal shield he and I had wisely put in place to protect our home from any future financial folly on Desmond's part. Tears, not of sorrow this time but of profound, agonizing relief, streamed down my face. This was it. The anchor. The undeniable truth. I was not a forgetful old woman. I was the sole legal owner of this house. His entire case, his entire campaign of cruelty, was built on a foundation of lies and a stunning, arrogant ignorance of this single crucial fact. The relief was so immense it felt like I could breathe again. The fog of his gaslighting began to dissipate, burned away by the clear, cold light of this legal truth. He had not just underestimated my spirit. He had forgotten his own history, the very history that now gave me the power to destroy his scheme. I held the deed in my hands, the paper cool and solid against my trembling fingers. This document wasn't just proof of my sanity. It was a weapon. The most powerful weapon I could possibly possess. He wanted to play legal games. He had no idea the war he had just started. And he had no idea that I, his forgetful old mother, was holding the one document that guaranteed his absolute, unconditional surrender. The discovery of the deed was a powerful antidote to the poison of Desmond's gaslighting. It was my North Star, a fixed point of truth. But I knew that holding the truth and wielding it effectively were two very different things. Desmond had lawyers and the polished image of a successful man, concerned for his mother. I was a 72-year-old woman he was actively trying to paint as senile. I needed an ally. My thoughts turned immediately to Althea, my former daughter-in-law. It had been nearly 2 years since her messy divorce from Desmond, a separation driven by his growing arrogance. After the split, Desmond had systematically poisoned my relationship with Althea, telling me she was bitter and unstable, feeding me stories that made me hesitant to reach out. But my love for Althea had never truly faded, and she was the mother of my only grandchild, 10-year-old Chloe, whom I missed with a constant physical ache. With a heart full of nervous energy, I found her number and dialed. "Hello." Her voice was as warm as I remembered, though tinged with caution. "Althea, my dear," I said, my own voice shaky. "It's Geneva. I need to talk to you." 2 days later we met at a quiet cafe downtown. The moment she saw me, her face crumbled with concern. She hugged me, a real heartfelt hug that spoke volumes. "Oh, Geneva," she whispered. "What has he done to you?" Over cups of steaming tea, I told her everything. The gaslighting, the cancelled appointments, the horrifying spectacle of my birthday party, and the conservatorship. Althea listened, her expression shifting from sorrow to a familiar, righteous anger. "That arrogant, selfish man," she murmured. "I should have known he would stoop this low. He rewrites history to suit his needs. He did it our entire marriage. He once convinced me I'd lost a $5,000 check from his parents. I spent a week in a panic, apologizing, feeling like a fool. A year later I found it in an old coat of his. He'd just forgotten to deposit it. He didn't even apologize. He just said, 'Well, look at that. Good thing you found it.' Then the hardest part. Althea," I said, my voice dropping, "the reason I haven't seen Chloe, Desmond told me that you felt it was best to keep her away, that my confusion was upsetting her." Althea's eyes widened in horror, then narrowed with a cold fury. "He what? Geneva, that is a monstrous lie. He told me that you were the one who needed space, that you were too frail for visitors. He's been telling Chloe that Grandma is very, very sick in the head. He has been heartbroken. She asks about you every single day." The confirmation of his calculated cruelty was the final blow. Any lingering maternal instinct to protect Desmond vanished. I took a deep breath and slid a folder across the table. "He made a mistake, Althea," I said, my voice now cold and steady. "A very big one." I showed her the deed. I explained the post-nup, my sole ownership. I saw her eyes light up with a fierce, intelligent understanding. "He doesn't know," she breathed, a slow smile spreading across her face. "He doesn't even know he's trying to steal a house that isn't his to take." "He doesn't," I confirmed. "He forgot the most important detail of all." I leaned forward. "Althea, I am going to lose this house. But not to him. I'm going to give it away. To Chloe. I want you to hold it in trust for her until she comes of age. But I need your help to make it happen before his conservatorship case gets any further. Althea looked at me at the deed, then back at me. I saw the daughter-in-law I had loved, the mother of my grandchild, the woman who had also been wronged by Desmond, and I saw a powerful, unwavering ally. Yes, Geneva, she said finally, her voice ringing with conviction. Yes. We will do it. She paused, her expression turning practical. But we can't do it alone. We need to be smart about this. We need a lawyer who is aggressive, loyal, and who will see this for what it is. A name surfaced in my mind, a beacon of hope. I know just who to call, I said, a smile touching my lips for the first time in days. My goddaughter Tina. She's a brilliant lawyer. She will not let him get away with this. Our somber alliance was forged. Two women, scorned by the same man, now united by a shared love for a child and a shared desire for justice. Desmond thought he had isolated me. He had no idea he had just accidentally reunited the two people who, with the right legal firepower, had the power to bring his entire world crashing down. The days following my alliance with Althea were a masterclass in controlled, strategic warfare, all conducted beneath a mask of quiet, grieving vulnerability. To Desmond, I was still the forgetful, ailing mother, a problem he was patiently waiting for the courts to solve. He had no idea that I was meeting secretly with my brilliant lawyer and goddaughter Tina, to orchestrate the most significant emotional and financial checkmate of his life. Our first meeting in Tina's office was a revelation. Seeing the facts laid out, I wasn't a difficult mother. I was a client with an ironclad case. Geneva, he has legally backed himself into a corner of his own making, Tina had said, a sharp glint in her eye. This won't just be a defense. We will shut him down completely. For the first time I felt the thrill of the hunt. The plan was audacious, its timing perfect. Tina explained that until a judge formally ruled on my competency, I was, as the sole, undisputed owner of the property, free to do with it as I pleased. The legal instrument was a deed of gift, a simple, powerful document that would transfer the full title of the house to Althea Grant, with the ironclad stipulation that she hold it in trust for my granddaughter, Chloe, until she turned 21. While Tina drafted the unassailable paperwork, I began the painful but necessary process of preparing for my departure. Althea and Marlon, my dear late husband's godson, would come over in the evenings, after Desmond had made his perfunctory, condescending daily check-in call. Under the cover of darkness, we packed my most cherished belongings. My books, my art, the small box of Arthur's letters. It was a stealthy exodus, a quiet reclaiming of my life. The boxes were stored in Marlon's garage, ready for a new home I had yet to find. The day I signed the deed of gift in Tina's office, with Althea by my side, was one of profound, bittersweet emotion. I was signing away my home of 40 years, but I was also signing away Desmond's power over me. I was safeguarding my grandchild's legacy and delivering a form of justice so pure it was almost poetic. Tina filed the deed with the county recorder's office the very next morning. The transfer of ownership was now a matter of public record. Irrevocable. Final. Now for the fireworks. We decided that Althea, as the new legal owner, should be the one to deliver the news. She chose the following Saturday. Desmond, I knew, had plans to bring Brandy to the house to measure for new drapes. Another small act of torture designed to remind me that my time there was limited. Althea waited until she knew they were both there in my living room, likely discussing which of my possessions to sell first. Althea didn't knock. She used the old key I had given her, a key Desmond never knew she still possessed. She walked in, calm and composed, holding a single official-looking envelope. Desmond and his girlfriend turned, their expressions shifting from surprise to annoyance. "What are you doing here, Althea?" Desmond demanded, his voice sharp. "This isn't your house anymore." "Oh, but that's where you're wrong, Desmond," Althea replied, her voice cool and steady. She handed him the envelope. "As of yesterday, it isn't yours either. It's mine." He snatched the envelope and ripped it open. Inside was a formal eviction notice, drafted by Tina, giving him 30 days to vacate the property now legally owned by Althea Grant. His face went through a spectacular series of transformations, from arrogant dismissal to confused disbelief, then to a dawning horror. "What is this?" he stammered. "You can't. Mom would never." "Your mother," Althea said, her voice cutting through his bluster, "was tired of you trying to have her declared incompetent so you could steal her home. She was tired of you poisoning her relationship with her own granddaughter. So she gave the house to me to hold in trust for Chloe, your daughter. Althea later told me that Brandy just stared, her jaw slack. Does this mean we can't get the new kitchen? She'd asked, her voice a petulant whine. The look Desmond gave her was apparently withering. He finally found his voice, a roar of fury. She can't do that. I have a conservatorship petition. She's mentally incompetent. Your petition is now moot, Desmond, Althea said calmly. You can't become the conservator of an asset she no longer owns. You have 30 days. I suggest you start packing. The fireworks had begun. His cruel, calculated plan had been met with a brilliant, perfectly legal countermove he had never seen coming. He had thought he was a king about to claim his castle. He had just been served an eviction notice by the queen he thought he had already deposed. The fallout was as spectacular as Tina had predicted. Desmond's world imploded. His conservatorship petition, now baseless since the primary asset he sought to protect was no longer mine, was swiftly dismissed by a bewildered judge. His attempts to fight it with another lawyer were met by Tina's unassailable wall of legal fact. The post-nup, the deed, his own documented campaign of cruelty. He didn't have a leg to stand on. Brandy vanished at the first sign of real trouble, her dreams of playing Lady of the Manor evaporating along with Desmond's claim to it. He was left alone with the wreckage of his own making. The eviction was a quiet, deeply satisfying affair. Althea handled it with Marlon there for moral support. She told me Desmond was a shell of a man, his usual bluster gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed despair as he packed his expensive suits and designer shoes into boxes. He was forced to move into a small, soulless corporate apartment. Me. I had already begun my new life. With the proceeds from my other assets which Tina had helped me secure, I purchased a stunning penthouse overlooking the lake. It was a place of light, of air, of peace. The walls were glass, not heavy plaster, and they held no echoes of past sorrows, only the reflection of the wide-open sky. It was filled not with the heavy memories of a life that was over, but with the bright promise of a future that was entirely my own. Marlon, my dear true son in all the ways that mattered, helped me move in, his quiet pride a balm to my soul. Althea and Chloe were my first dinner guests. We sat on my new balcony, the city lights twinkling below, and for the first time since my own son had turned on me, I felt a genuine, uncomplicated joy. Chloe, free from her father's poisonous influence, was her old, bright self again, her laughter filling the space, a sound I had missed more than I could say. Watching her with Althea, I knew I had done the right thing. The house on Chestnut Street, her future home, was safe. Desmond's case was officially dismissed. I heard he was struggling, his social standing in ruins. One evening my phone rang. I answered and heard his voice, no longer arrogant but small and broken. "Mom," he whispered. We need to talk. Please." I listened for a moment to his rambling, self-pitying attempt at an apology, his talk of misunderstandings, and making a terrible mistake. I thought of the fear he had instilled in me, the public shame, the lies he told my grandchild. There was no misunderstanding. It was a calculated act of war, and he had lost. The old maternal ache, the instinct to soothe and forgive, was finally, blessedly quiet. "Desmond," I said, my voice clear and steady, "there is nothing left to talk about. You made your choices. You chose a path of greed and disrespect. And you have received your consequences." I paused, looking out over the glittering lights of my new view. "I wish you well in finding your way. But my way from now on is without you. Goodbye." I hung up the phone, not with anger or hatred, but with a profound, liberating sense of peace. My victory was not a loud one. It was a quiet, strategic reclaiming of my life and dignity. I had been underestimated, deemed forgetful and incompetent. But I had remembered what mattered most. My own strength, my own worth, and the undeniable truth held in a dusty, forgotten document. My win was a quiet one, a serene evening in my beautiful new home, surrounded by the family that truly loved me, my heart steeled by the lessons learned, but finally at peace.